What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the GTD episode. My name is Cameron Selby, and we're going to be breaking down the NFL Divisional Round DraftKings slate. It is a four-gamer. It's a lot of excitement after one of the most exciting wildcard weekends I can remember in some time. From Saturday to Monday, all kinds of excitement. From Saturday to Monday, bell to bell, it was just an incredible weekend. There was comebacks in there. There was plot twists. There was upsets, all that fun stuff. I think my overall money line picks went 5-1, with the last one being the Houston Texans. So if I'm doing like a bracket style thing, I'm somewhat still alive. But yeah, we appreciate you tuning in. If you tell any lines in Discord, I hope it prospered for you. A little bit of up and down in terms of DraftKings, but we had some parlays hit. It was some fun stuff there. But yeah, just leave a like, comment, subscribe. All this is free. We're just trying to go through this postseason, have the time of our lives watching football, but also making the best bets possible and making some fun lines along the way. Everything is posted in Discord, usually an hour before the contest. So even though we're going to be breaking down the main slate today, there's a Saturday only, there's a Sunday only, there's showdowns. We're probably going to be playing everything. And if you have some favorite props in there, you can always shout those out as well. Like I said, it's completely for free. We're just trying to interact with you guys and continue and finish this season strong, like it has been. It's been one of, if not my best year ever in terms of return on investment. So hopefully it has been for you guys too. But I'm excited to see what happens this week. It's another round, and I just want to build some really strong lines for you guys. So without further ado, let's get rocking and rolling. All right, so before we get into pricing, I want to go over through all four totals. I was going to say the biggest totals. There's only 4 games this week. Buffalo, Denver kicks it off on Saturday afternoon at a 46 total. That is the second highest on the slate. Saturday night, it's going to be the Niners and the Seahawks playing for the third time this year. Every single game has been a low-scoring game, but this one is at a 45 total. The lowest total on the entire week is going to be the Sunday afternoon slate between the Texans and the Patriots, which is all the way down at 40.5, which is by far kind of separated itself among the rest. And then the highest total of the week, it has gone down 3 points. And there's a reason why, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But the Rams and the Bears, 48.5 on paper, looks like a great back and forth, or a way to but that looks like a great way to, I guess, start off or have the core of your build circled around. But at the same time, it's gone down 3 full points. You don't really see it that often, but there's a lot of cold weather going on this weekend, and we'll get into that right now. So Denver, surprisingly, there's not really anything worth mentioning. Seattle also upper 40s, even on a Saturday night, should be calm, no participation or weather impact there. But the Patriots game should be a little bit freezing, possible snow flurry, but not really any sustained winds or anything of that nature. But the Rams and the Bears is the one that is an issue. And it's not because of rain. It's not even because of really strong winds. It's because of frigid temperatures. There could be a feels like temperature being below 10 degrees on that Sunday evening game. And that's going to have a massive impact. Cold games don't necessarily correlate with the lowest of the low total games, but frigid temperatures really kind of slowed down the tempo of offenses, so there's not a lot of back and forth. That said, though, Chicago has been the cardiac kids all year. They showed that even more in the wild card weekend when they were down 21-3, and then with 5 minutes left, they were down 11. Came back, won the game. It was one of the best live bets I've made. I got them, I think, at one point at 753, plus 753, and they ended up cashing on me, which that was really fun. It's always fun to knock out your live bets as well. But yeah, kicking off with the quarterback slate, it's going to start off with Josh Allen. And Josh Allen was the guy I took the stand on. I built 5 lines in the main, and he was in every single one of my lineups as the quarterback. And he did pretty well through the air. 273, threw a passing touchdown as well. There wasn't as much fourth quarter back and forth that I was thinking that there would be. There was also a slower start in terms of scoring in this game. It really didn't kick off until the second half. But the 2 rushing touchdowns is what really got him there. And that's the kind of upside that he provides and why he kind of separates himself from everybody else. So even though he does have that red opponent rank against him, he is almost matchup proof in his own right. And when it comes down to it, it just depends on how the ownership is playing. Even though he was the highest owned quarterback, he was still below 25% owned in most contests And then even on the Sunday slate, he was pretty even in terms of ownership with him and Trevor Lawrence. And so even though he was the highest, I was still massively overweight. And then this week, highest projected quarterback, and yet he looks like he's roughly the third or fourth highest owned quarterback. And his price only went up $100. Outside of Matthew Stafford, he's kind of in a tier of his own in terms of pricing. On top of that, there's some injuries from the receiver perspective that kind of opens things up a little bit more for the Buffalo skill players. And on top of that, you don't really even need to stack him because he has multi-rushing touchdown upside. I'm still going to rock with him. Buffalo started out, opened the week as a 1-point favorite. Now it has flipped to being Denver being a 1-point favorite. I think that is probably my favorite game of the week, and we get it first and foremost. So that's going to be a really exciting game, and I expect some scoring in that one despite both defenses playing pretty well right now. So I think at 71 is something I'm going to be very interested in. Matthew Stafford might be the most popular. Everybody's going to look at the matchup. Chicago, Jordan Love throwing for 4 touchdowns this past week and losing. He was only the third quarterback in NFL history to throw 4 touchdowns in a losing effort in the playoffs, and it came against the Chicago Bears. So same environment, but again, even colder than it was this past week. That said, Matthew Stafford, if he's involved on 300 yards or 3 passing touchdowns as upside, he can get you there with 26 fantasy points, just like he did this past week against Carolina. I think he was my Saturday quarterback for the 3-gamer, and that felt good until Bryce Young also threw for 20 plus, and there was a lot of high scoring, and Jordan Love and Caleb Williams, they all got there. So I don't know in terms of on a DK value who had the best value, but when you are a mid 6K quarterback and you get 26 fantasy points, you are absolutely going to take that 10 out of 10 times. I'm not going to worry about everything else, and it just happened to work out for other quarterbacks to where it wasn't as much of a separator as I thought it would be, at least on that slate. But with that said, the frigid temperatures is something to keep an eye on. But with him, it's mainly the cold weather that could be a factor in lowering the ceilings of these guys, because if it ends up being a 20-17 kind of game, which is way even lower than what the total is kind of reflecting now, even in spite of the total coming down, I think it might be tough to get to, and it might be good leverage to get off of these double stacks and situations for the Rams, because it could just turn into a grinded out game between both of these teams. And if that's the case, and he is the highest owned quarterback, maybe that's a good spot to get leverage on, because everybody's going to be trying to play CMC, Puka Nakua this week. And if you're going to be playing all these skill players for high ownership, you got to get it different somehow. So that is one of the initial ways that, as I'm looking at these pricing, it kind of goes down that way. There was a lot of high scoring efforts last week at quarterback, and I don't think that is going to be the case this week. So anybody that does go above 25 fantasy points, whether that is Stafford, whether that is May, Allen, Nix, Caleb Williams coming back, whatever, I don't expect there to be as many high 20-point quarterbacks this week. And so it could be a big separator position. That's why I think I am really interested in just running. That's why I kind of really am just running back the well with Josh Allen at quarterback, because even Drake May went against a tough matchup and a tough defense, and he did fine. But 19 fantasy points, especially last week with all the high scoring quarterbacks, did not get it done, especially being the second highest priced quarterback. That said, he had probably, I believe, the biggest price decrease of all these quarterbacks. Went down $500, and he's going against the Houston Texans. Lowest total on the slate, and it is the lowest total on the slate. And the problem is just I don't trust the ability for him to absolutely hit his ceiling. I expect another 18 to 20 point outing, but at the same time, if everybody else is going to be around the 15-point range, that could be a way that you're getting some distance on the field. On top of that, he's the second lowest owned quarterback, and it could be the highest leverage play based on the optimizers we use. So it's a good leverage spot. I just still am not really interested in getting there. Especially, I don't plan on playing 5 lines again this week for the main slate. I might play 1 to 3. And if that's the case, I'm probably going to take him out of my pool. Caleb Williams had one of the price increases going up 500, 50% completion percentage, but went over 300 yards in his playoff debut, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He was awesome in clutch like he has been for a while now. But the thing is, it takes a while to get going. The Rams, towards the end of the season, were able to be thrown on. So if this game was in Los Angeles, I would feel entirely different about this slate. But the fact is, Caleb Williams and Stafford being in a feels-like game below 10 degrees, it might be a little tough to get to, especially if they're going to be 2 of the 3 highest-owned quarterbacks for good reason. If I had to decide between one or the other, I might side with Caleb just because he has a tad more rushing upside, and on top of the fact that I'm picking the Rams to win this game. So I would anticipate Chicago playing from behind once again. So I don't know if I really have a second quarterback that I feel concretely about in this slate. Like Josh Allen is number 1, and number 2, you can really make an argument for a lot of people. Bo Nix, on the other side of that Josh Allen game, it's going to be his playoff debut going against the Bills, who are top 5 against the pass. That said, they're going to be missing a couple members in the secondary this week. So that kind of opens some things up. He also has some rushing upside himself through the last 4 games, at least 7 carries, has had a couple of rushing touchdowns baked in there as well. I just don't think I don't think he has a ceiling performance in him, but at the same time, since he's sub 6K, I'm anticipating his receivers being reasonably priced as well. I think it's fine and okay to get to. It is one of the most fair weather games of the weekend as well. So that helps. Denver's a favorite. If you're picking him or picking them, I just everybody's around 10%. I think it's a pretty even quarterback slate for good reason. And if that's the case, just kind of mix and match where you think and wherever the value is. There's not many quarterbacks that I would double stack, but Bo Nix probably is going to be one of them just because of the way that he typically spreads the ball around. But Courtland Sutton really came on strong at the end of the year. Troy Franklin, Marvin Mims, Pat Bryant, all these guys, if you can nail the correct ones, and on top of that, because of the way the pricing ended to end the year, I would anticipate some lower ownership from those Denver receivers as well. So a lot of bring back options if you are going the Buffalo route, but if you are wanting to stack some Bo Nix, there I think are a lot of fun options all below 6K. Now, Brock Purdy, Sam Darnold, this is the 3rd time we're going to do this dance. Obviously, Brock Purdy had the time of his life going for, 13 combined touchdowns in a 3-week span, and then followed that up at home against Seattle on a Saturday night game and shit the bed. Went for 127, didn't have a touchdown. They only scored 3 points, and he had his lowest fantasy total of the entire season in a not necessarily must-win game, but if they won that game, they're the 1 seed and not having to go to Seattle for this part 3. Even going way back when, all the way back to week 1, he had a couple interceptions, a couple touchdowns there as well to get him to 18 fantasy points, but I just am worried about this being a really, really low-scoring game. And George Kittle is now out for the year. Ricky Pearsall, who knows if he's going to be available. At this point, I am recording as of a Friday morning. Demarcus Robinson was a welcome showdown slate thing, but now that everybody could possibly be on him, is it really worth it? I'm not necessarily sure yet. He does have very affordable stacking pieces at wide receiver, but this could just be a situation where they just can't get anything rolling on offense, and the only path of this win is a grinded out 17 to 13 kind of game. And if that's the case, that's probably not a great approach to attack the passing game in this specific game. Sam Darnold on the other side, he has a Q tag. I guess he's been undergoing treatment for an oblique injury. I don't anticipate that making him miss this game. There's no chance he misses this game. That said, though, it could impact his fantasy outlook and performance. And the 2 games he's played this year against San Francisco, neither time has he been involved on a touchdown. He has not eclipsed 9 fantasy points. And so even though he's a reasonable $5,400, That doesn't mean that JSN is out of my interest or lineup build as well. Forgot to mention him as a high-priced option. He's probably the first guy I'm exiting out. Purdy might be another. And I might just take the stand on Drake May being out as well. CJ Stroud, really, I don't know what to make of him as a fantasy relevant asset. On top of that, the Nico Collins news is a massive deal. His number one was concussed, out for the. He's more than likely, because that was a Monday night game, going to miss this game. It has not officially been ruled out yet, but if that is the case, he has very cheap options. Everybody's 4,600 and below, but at the same time, it's on the road, it's in the cold. You were without your number one. I think I'm kind of talking myself into 2 or 3 guys at this point, and I don't think you necessarily. It does help save money there, but I don't really want to approach my builds going that way. Running back wise, CMC leads the way. He is in a price tier of his own, 8,800, which is 15 more hundred than the next most expensive guy, 2,200 from the rest of the field. And this comes down to, can he weather the storm on an inefficient matchup and get there based on volume? That's what we anticipated last week. It took a while, but he got 2 receiving touchdowns in the fourth quarter to get there with 29 fantasy points. That said, I took the stand on, instead of sprinkling CMC and Puka, I took the stand on, I'm going to play all CMC and none of Puka. And then Puka finishes with 37. Christian finishes with 29. I'm happy I got the 29, but sometimes these stands don't necessarily work out the best, especially when Puka was in more of a shootout than I anticipated, and outscoring him did not help matters. But that said, he's going to be the highest owned running back, and for a good reason. He has the highest floor by far. That said, though, his worst fantasy output of the year as well was against Seattle in that Week 18 game. Obviously, when you're on offense and you're not scoring a single touchdown the entire game, that is going to lower your floor to even lower than it has been. But even going way back when, he still was 3 yards a carry week 1. That was a game that was kind of very interesting and comparable, because George Kittle scored a touchdown the first possession, if I'm not mistaken, and then left the game due to a hammy injury and did not play the rest of the game. And that was the first game of, like, Jawan Jennings, I think, was out, and it was just him and Ricky Pearsall. And Ricky Pearsall, I think, went over 100, but Christian McCaffrey, 10 targets, caught 9 balls for 73 yards, and even in a touchdownless game, still got to 23 fantasy points. And is that going to be enough on this slate? Maybe. It's not like there's any crazy good matchups or elite matchups at this point. When you're in the final 8 in the postseason, it's really rare to get there with an atrocious defense. So 23, 25 could get the job done. I mean, James Cook right below him, 7,300. That is the worst matchup. And he's gone 3 straight games below 9 fantasy points himself. Obviously, the Jets one, I shouldn't even count, because he just went there to play the game, got the rushing title, incentive, whatever it was, that he played a possession. But other than that, the Philly game, in a grinded out game, he had 24 opportunities, which finished with 77 yards. Didn't score a touchdown. This past week against Jacksonville, a lot of people were really interested. I remember I was watching some Roto Grinder stuff, and a lot of people's big stands was taking James Cook, and I'm like, I'm just not in that boat. And he ends up going for 3 yards a carry, no touchdowns, not involved. He has not really been much involved as a pass catcher, unless it's a long touchdown screen that goes a long way, like that 51-yarder week 1, or he had a couple big plays against Tampa Bay, which led to his own, or one of only 2 receiving touchdowns on the year. I'm probably staying away. I think running back is a good way to double down on the cheaper guys. The first one that's going to stand out is RJ Harvey. He is also going to be the second most popular running back on the slate. Finished with the dud in week 18 in terms of inefficiency, but most of his games he's pretty much been inefficient. But the fact that he has been playing without J.K. Dobbins, having the touchdown upside he has quietly with 12 on the year, I think that is definitely worth noting. I've been saying for a while now the Buffalo matchup isn't as elite as it appears, but it is the best matchup for the rest of the slate. And he's only a modest 6,200. I'm kind of surprised his price dipped down this far. I mean, he was in the high 6K range to end the season, and so he's going to lower down to 62 as we get into the postseason for a good reason. That's why a lot of people are on him. I don't want to skip over Kyron, though. I think Kyron could be some good leverage because no one ever really wants to play him. He's barely a pass catcher. On top of that, Blake Corum has kind of eaten into his workload. Blake Corum has kind of eaten into his workload. And last week, his snap share was the exact same, essentially, that it was the previous week. So there was no elevation of usage or anything now that it was playing against Carolina, playing in the playoffs. He salvaged his day with the receiving touchdown. Otherwise, he had a pretty disappointing day. But going against Chicago, they did pretty much shut down the Green Bay rush attack this past week. But it mainly comes down to can we stomach Blake Corum having a lock of 10 to 12 opportunities? Because that's more than likely what's going to happen. Spending 6,600, I feel like a lot of people are going to go to these two and then go down below. So he might be the odd man out in a lot of people's builds. And if that's the case, he could be lower owned. And that could be some positive leverage to go your way. I'm picking the Rams to win this game. So playing from ahead, anticipating a lower score, grinded out game. Maybe that's a couple more carries, maybe a couple more targets, maybe a touchdown that's kind of more or less guaranteed. So I don't mind him, especially if there's a lot of red down here below. Like the New England running back situation, Ramondre Stevenson's been freaking sick over the last month or so since he returned from the bye. Since he returned post-bye, he's been just extremely efficient. There hasn't been a single game he's been below 5 yards a carry. He's had pass-catching upside. He had 75 yards receiving this past week. He had 2 receiving touchdowns the previous 2 weeks. 3 for 27 is a very solid floor of a pass catcher role. And he's also scoring rushing touchdowns. He's a goal line back. The problem is he's not getting 15-plus opportunities a game because Travion Henderson has been also really strong. But coming off a really solid week, I think ownership is starting to finally pick up with him. He is now 3 times the ownership of Travion Henderson, who is now cheaper than him because for a while, Travion has been the more expensive guy. So now that he is the less expensive guy, Ramondre goes on the field for about 63%. Travion with about 41. They were the only 2 running backs that played. They actually played a couple snaps together. But otherwise, I think Travion's kind of been relegated to a 1B, at least for this postseason. And so I think it's pretty tough. But if I have to side with one, I'm probably going to go Ramondre and just eat. I don't even know if it's considered chalk at 20%. But reasonable price if you're picking Houston to win this. Reasonable price if you're picking New England to win this game. They're going to be playing from ahead. It could be a grinded out game because it is a low total. And I think you're at the mercy of just if they can pay off. Woody Marks, another rookie, 100-yard game quietly against Pittsburgh in a game where it was 7-6 the entire first 3 quarters, and then the defense scores 2 touchdowns. He puts it away in the 4th with a rushing touchdown, goes over 100 yards on his own. Being 5,900, it's a one of the worst matchups. And he's 5,900. I don't know if I have a dog in the fight between picking him versus a Ramondre. I think I slightly side with Ramondre. However, Woody Marks is also pretty low owned as well. But the guys that are really, I think, the key to this slate are going to be Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker. Zach Charbonnet, last time he did play San Francisco, last time we did see him, had 21 opportunities, which I believe was a season best. 21 opportunities. He has started to be efficient over the last couple of weeks, had 100 yards, which was the only time he's eclipsed that mark this season in week 17 with 2 touchdowns. And then the following week with 74 rushing yards as well. And usually over the last good while, it's been frustrating to roster Seattle running backs because Kenneth Walker gets the yards, Charbonnet gets the touchdowns, but then they score 10 fantasy points and it doesn't really do anything. I think they finished with identical fantasy points for the entirety of the season, or at least through week 17. I'm not sure about last week, but even last week, you saw that big score, the 18.7 from Charbonnet. Kenneth Walker had 17 in his own right, and that was without a touchdown. Nearly had 100 rushing yards. He had 20 opportunities himself. In terms of snaps, Charbonnet actually outsnapped him about 57% to 42%. Cam Akers came in for one snap. I don't know when or why that was, but the fact of the matter is, now that it's the playoffs, I think that both of them are viable. They both tore up San Francisco last time they played them. One of the better matchups on the slate, and they're the cheapest because they're the biggest unknown in terms of all running backs and how we're going to approach it. I anticipate these guys projecting really well. I don't know if you can play them together, but even if you want to, that saves a lot of money going a different route. The problem is, it's like with Nico Collins being out, you're probably not going to play both and then also play JSN. So it's like, who are you spending up for in the event that you're playing both? But with that said, I'm pretty interested in both sides. If I'm playing multiple lineups, I think I might have a Seattle running back in every single line this week. And I might side with Kenneth Walker just because I just can't quit you. But don't mind him whatsoever. In terms of receivers, Puka Nacua, league of his own, one of the best matchups. The problem is, even though he had 21 freaking opportunities this past week, 2 touchdowns. One was a screen that was thrown behind him, so it was a rushing touchdown. That was a bummer for Stafford lovers last week. That would have been a 30-point day, now that I think about it. But Puka is league of his own, $9,000. He's going to be a core play. Highest owned receiver. Even though he's the highest owned receiver, he's still showing positive leverage. I don't anticipate a 37-point day, but I anticipate him being very, very involved. So he's a core piece, and I think this week I'm actually on the other side. So last week I took the stand on CMC over Puka, and this week, if I had to pick one or the other to just play all these guys and I'm not sprinkling both, I'm probably siding with Puka. That said, because I was wrong last week, I'm probably wrong now. But yeah, he's a really solid play, really solid matchup, and I think there's ways to afford him. I don't know if there's a way to afford both, but we'll see. I think if I had to pick two of the 3 expensive guys, I think I might opt for Puka plus JSN instead of Puka plus CMC. You save a couple $100 that way. JSN has been as awesome as you can ask for. Him being $8,500, 38% owned. He's also going to be the second highest owned receiver. So it sounds like a lot of people are going to be trying to jam in 2 of these 3 guys up top. Nico Collins, I mentioned, had a rough day this past week, but concussed. I don't anticipate him playing since it was a Monday night game. If he does not, I'm going to skip down a little bit and filter to the Houston receivers, because who is the guy that goes up? Well, I don't know if the snap share is going to really tell anything, because this injury took place in the 4th quarter. But in terms of overall snaps, Xavier Hutchinson played the second most. Jaden Higgins played the 4th most. Had 3 catches on 4 targets. But Christian Kirk was the dog last week. Minimum priced, 31 fantasy points, 8 for 9, 144 in a score. I don't want to chase ceiling games that much, but at the same time, he's still only 4,100. He played 56% of the snaps last week, so it wasn't like he just lucked into a bunch of targets, but it just opens up a lot if you go that route. And if Nico's out, I'd anticipate him siding with some of the veterans, and I think he's got a solid floor of a 10 fantasy point day baked in there. And it kind of came out of nowhere, but I think because of the circumstances, I'm going to side with Christian Kirk, avoiding outside matchups, playing in the slot, playing as a deep field threat as well, and just kind of see what happens from there. $4,100 really has my attention. I'm not really interested in Jalen Noel. Maybe some Dalton Schultz at tight end if you wanted to go that route. But that's how I'd approach the Houston situation, is going Christian Kirk, maybe a little bit of Jaden Higgins, but then that's pretty much all I really have interest in from the Houston offensive side of things. Devontae Adams came back, had 13 targets against Carolina, and just 5 for 72 is okay, but it's not going to – that's disappointing based on the opportunities that he had, because it was a welcoming sight to have 13 targets in this first game back. Now that his price is his price remains the exact same because of his okay performance, ownership is pretty reasonable, only about 20%. It's the same matchup Puka has, but he also has the touchdown equity built in there as well. So I don't mind him at all, honestly. The problem is just the pessimism a little bit because of the cold weather, but we've seen him ball out in cold weather before and in the playoffs. But yeah, outside of this past week against Carolina, the previous 5 games he played were all in decently cold weather or at least outdoors. 39 fantasy points, 26, 22, 22, 18. All of them at least 10 targets. And I know that was when he was an alpha without a Puka Nakua-like player on the opposing side. But being 6,500, I'm more than fine going that route with him. After that, this is going to be the range where I think a lot of people mix and match. I don't think anybody outside of a Khalil Shakir will approach more than 20% ownership, maybe slightly, but a lot of these people are going to be the tournament plays that you're going to be working towards. Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, 52, 5,300 respectively. Decent matchups, but Rome being banged up like he is barely was involved in terms of this comeback effort where Caleb Williams had 360. He only had 2 catches for 44 yards. And then DJ Moore had a really solid start, kind of died off. I think he had 4 catches in the first quarter, if I'm not mistaken, and then was not really involved at all, and then caught the game-winning touchdown or go-ahead touchdown against Green Bay in the comeback effort. And in terms of snaps, it looks like DJ had about 86%. Rome 69 on his way back was reasonable, and then Luther Burden had a healthy 63%, which he's down to 4,700. So it's hard because all these guys are probably going to project for about 10, and I don't know what separates one from the other than knowing that Luther is going to be about 25% owned, and then the other two are probably going to be 5% or less in large field stuff. It's a leverage thing for me. If you want to go that route, it's really easy to get overweight to any of them if you play multiple lines. I think I kind of, if I had to rank them 1, 2, 3, based on ownership being involved as well, I think I'll say DJ Moore, 1, number 2, Luther, number 3, Rome. That pains me to say because I love Rome, and I was big on him early in the season. It just has died off to no end. But going back up here, I mentioned Courtland Sutton being a decent day. I mean, he had 4 straight games before this convincing win against the Chargers where he had 10-plus targets. And I think he's the one wide receiver one that has the 100-yard upside and a touchdown. And on top of that, he's shown pretty positive leverage. Stephon Diggs is too. His former team, no less, only played with Houston for a year, but he was with the team this past season before he tore his ACL about halfway through the year. Going tough matchup. Last week was a big dud. The offense couldn't really get going at all anyways, but 2 catches, 16 yards is not going to be a welcome sight there. So somebody's got to go off. I think I side with Sutton a little bit over Stephon Diggs, but I understand if you want to go the other route. Quarterback Juwan Jennings with wide receiver eligibility apparently is what this is. Finished with 10 fantasy points. His first game, Ricky Pearsall did not play. George Kittle got hurt really early, and he only had 1 reception, was 45 yards, but he also threw a touchdown to Christian McCaffrey, got them back in the game. They ended up going ahead to win it. And with Ricky Pearsall being a Q tag still, it still looks like it's a game time decision for Ricky Pearsall. So that's a big factor on my interest in Juwan Jennings, because if Ricky Pearsall is out, I'm more than fine with going Juwan being the only guy at 5,400. But if Ricky Pearsall plays, I think he might just kind of be one of the sprinkles, and it's an unconfident play to no end. Going down, though, I'm not really, other than Christian Kirk, obviously. Troy Franklin, I mentioned as a tournament play, but he's still a little pricey based on his role. His snaps have dipped below 50% for the last 5 games. He's been 50% or lower in terms of snaps. It hasn't really been crazy efficient opportunities outside of this Week 15 game where he nearly had 2 touchdowns, but 6 for 85 is fine. Even 4 for 66 could be fine in Week 16, but instead of spraying and praying for it, why not just kind of go a couple $100 to play somebody that you know is going to be on the field, and then possibly even a better matchup. With that said, Pat Bryant has been playing more snaps. He's been back and forth in and out of the lineup. Missed a week due to a hammy, I think. Came back, played 64%, then was concussed, missed the game, came back last week, 4 for 31, 4 with 31 yards. He's just an okay, sprinkle the value down low. But really what I want to do is filter the Buffalo receivers and just kind of show you, because Josh Palmer did not play last week, but official on IR out for the year. Tyrell Shavers played a ton of snaps. He's been a run blocker and has been on the field a lot lately, out for the year. Gabe Davis tore his ACL, out for the year. All of a sudden, they're out of bodies. They're out of bodies. So Brandon Cooks, you need to step up. He played 48% of the snaps this past week. Had 3 for 58, pretty reasonable at $4,000. His price has increased because of these injuries. Lil Shakir is going to be one of the most popular receivers. I can't believe his price did not go up $1,000 after having 12 targets. Caught all 12 in the wildcard round. Keon Coleman, though, he's one that's very interesting because of the fact that he's just been really bad. At times has been healthy scratch throughout the year. Played most of the snaps in Week 18, which was not a good sign because most of the guys that were playing were guys with Mitch Trubisky and not Josh Allen. So last week, it was a good sight that he did catch his only ball for 36 yards, set them up for, I think that was their first scoring touchdown of the day. By default, they are going to have him on the field, and they might sprinkle some McCole Hardman in there as well, who has not had a touch other than a fumble this year. So they're going to lean heavily on these 3 guys. They're going to lean heavily on the double tight end situation. I don't know if I have a lean, but just know that Keon being $3,500, being less than 5% owned, I think that might be my favorite way to not only get different, but save some money at receiver. Otherwise, I'm probably going with a lot of double tight end. In terms of these guys, Colston Loveland, his playoff debut, he has had one of the strongest stretches in the season. 10 targets in every game, 2 touchdowns. Last week, didn't score a touchdown, but 15 targets, 8 for 137 was the main factor in them coming back and winning that game. So him being 5,500, tier of his own in terms of pricing, but his ownership still isn't there. Still only about 12%. So you do have to spend up for him. But if you're playing a more balanced approach, I think you can easily fall. He could easily fall into your line. Dalton Schultz is going to be by far the biggest chalk on the slate, which makes me nervous because he's been chalked multiple times this year and he has failed. Last week he was pretty chalky and he failed. I remember playing him way back when. I think it might have been the Buffalo game where he was a chalky play and he had 1 catch and everybody else went off and so the price is there. It makes sense. I think my favorite tight end might be Dalton Kincaid. I don't know why he's under 10%. Caught a touchdown last week. 3 for 5 was okay. But the fact that the fact that he kind of is starting to elevate his snaps a little bit. All 3 tight ends played. Dawson Knox, Hawes, and Kincaid. So it's not like he's separating himself in terms of snap share. But I think as a receiving tight end, that might be my favorite play on the slate, is because of the fact that he's got touchdown equity in there. 2 veteran receivers are now out, and so that's going to elevate the tight end game, I think, a lot more. I think they're more beatable inside than they are outside because of their strong corner duo. And if that's the case, I'm going to lock and load with some Dalton Kincaid. It's going to be definitely overweight to him. And then I'm going to have to figure it out because Kobe Parkinson all of a sudden is a touchdown machine. He's got 9 touchdowns on the year, including this past week, which was the go-ahead touchdown against the Panthers. His one of only 2 targets, or is one of only 2 catches on the game. Tyler Higbee was a guy that I took a stand on, and it was awesome when he had that 36-yarder, but it would have been a lot more awesome if he had more than that. But that said, though, he played 51% of the snaps, $3,200. His price did not change, and I don't think his ownership is really there either. It looks like he's less than 10% owned. He projects pretty decently as a value, and so that's another route of being different. Jake Tonjes. We've seen stretches of him this year where George Kittle was out. Let's go back. Remember week 1 when George Kittle went down? Well, his first ever career touchdown was the game winner against Seattle. And then he followed that up with some pretty strong efforts. He had a 14, a 17, a 12 fantasy point day. Caught another touchdown there. And then against Chicago, that was the game that George Kittle missed because he got injured in this Indianapolis game. Caught 7 of 9 targets, 60 yards, and a touchdown. His price went up only because of this George Kittle injury, but I'm very interested in him as well, being 3,400. That said, everybody else is. It looks like mainly everybody's going to be playing Dalton Schultz, Jake Tonjes, and Jake Barner this week, getting positive leverage on some Hunter Henry, who caught a touchdown. I wish he has more volume because he usually is just 5 targets or less. But if he's scoring touchdowns, he can get involved, make plays down the field as well. So they're all reasonably priced. I think mix and matching is fine if you wanted to go that route. Values-wise, Tonjes, Higbee make a lot of sense. Otherwise, I might be going Dalton Kincaid as my favorite. And I like the fact that Colston Loveland is $5,500 and is not that highly owned. That said, though, if I'm playing him, I'm more than likely going to be playing double tight end because there's just not much stuff to play in the 3K range at receiver, but there's a lot to play at tight end. So let's go ahead and start building some lines, and then we'll get out of here. Defense-wise, I think a lot of them make sense. You can paint your picture for a lot of them. The 49ers at 22 seem to be a pretty reasonable value. I don't think that this is a high-scoring game, and I think this is a 24-20 kind of game. And if that's going to be the case, they can certainly get there with 5 fantasy points. So if you want to go that route, cool. Chicago, they can create turnovers, but they're the most gettable defense. If they don't create turnovers like last week, then it's not going to work out for you. Buffalo being without a couple secondary members, don't love that. I'm going to be playing a lot of Josh Allen this week, so I'm probably going to stay away from Denver's defense. So I'm kind of vaulting up to the top. And if I'm vaulting up to the top, Seattle, I think, might be in there in play in consideration. Seattle might be in play for me just because they get sacks, they get turnovers. He, more often than not, had a 9+ fantasy point floor throughout the year. $3,200, I think, is a pretty reasonable price. I'm picking them to win this game. They're at home. I don't mind that. Houston, 2 defensive touchdowns this past week. They've had 4 in the last 4 games. They've only had 1 game since, week 9. 1 game where they haven't scored at least 7 fantasy points. So really strong floor. Lowest total game on the week. And I think because a lot of people are picking the Patriots to win, nobody really wants to pick the Houston's defense. Patriots defense probably a little too expensive. But that said, if they shut Houston out without Nico Collins, they could get back to that 15 fantasy point threshold. The main thing and takeaway I see is that everybody wants to just punt down to the 49ers to save money. Everybody is sprinkling the names below the Patriots, and then nobody's playing the Patriots, nobody's playing the Rams. So we could always start out like that and then go from there. I'm going to do a Josh Allen build. It's going to start off like this, and I understand this is the chalky way to double. You don't have to double him. You don't even have to single him because he has multi-rush touchdown upside. But starting like that is probably how I'm going to do most lines. A lot of people's obvious way of bringing it back is going to be RJ Harvey because of the fact that it's just a good matchup. Touchdown machine. People would anticipate Denver playing from ahead if they're favored at this point. Him being $6,200 is fine. I think good leverage, though, honestly might be going Courtland Sutton because he's $5,900. A couple secondary members out, and he's less than 20% owned. So I think that might be the route I might go. At running back wise, we still have to afford one of the expensive guys up top. Let's just put in Puka for now. And then we'll put in some Seattle running back situation down here. So let's say Kenneth Walker is the guy. And then last guy in, we got to pick another running back, but we're also punting down somewhere else. So it might be something along the lines of doing that. Yes, sir. And then going with the last guy in being Christian Kirk. That's a really fun line. So you got the double stack with Buffalo, the bring back with Cortland Sutton. You got Kyron in there, which is a lower owned running back play. Kenneth Walker, Christian Kirk as a chalky guy. Khalil Shakir is a chalky guy. You get off the chalk of Christian McCaffrey. You get off the chalk of JSN. You get off the chalk of RJ Harvey. And you still have $200 remaining, which is fun. I think this is a slate where you can leave about $400 or $500 if you really wanted to. Let's reset. Let's reload. Let's go with a Matthew Stafford build because I want to just say the weather's not as bad. And I want to do this because it's affordable. Let's go back to 49ers defense. We probably have to do that at this point. The bring back in this game, I'm going to say is DJ Moore. I think if Price, they're reasonable or similar price. So if Price didn't matter, it might be Colston Loveland. But I might have to go double tight end to afford something down low this week. I might even triple stack. Let's go Tyler Higbee. Let's go with if I went all the way down or if I went to CMC, I don't think that's enough to get any of the cheap tight ends we were talking about. If you have a minimum price guy, that could be a final word. Maybe we go down to Luther Burden, a couple $100. That's $3,500. And then that's enough for Jake Tonjes. That's enough for Jake Tonjes. That's enough for Keon Coleman as well. Or if you didn't want CMC and you wanted the mid-tier running back again, you go Kyron Williams. And then you can go back down to Khalil Shakir. Perfect. Yeah, you can do this. Khalil Shakir, you got DJ Moore in there. Or if you wanted Rome, that's more than fine as well. And again, if you want to take the stand of Charbonnet, I can no longer fight the logic of doing that. But on this one, you get the double. You get the bring back with DJ Moore. Or actually, we got a triple going on with this Tyler Higbee news. And if you wanted to go to Charbonnet, you can get up to Jake Tonjes. Or you can get up to Rome. You can go down to Luther. Try to get up to Colston if you wanted to. But you got Puka, Devontae Adams. Actually, that's 4. That's 4. I don't want 4. I probably will just do that. Leave some salary on the table. Or you can go up a defense. I mentioned being interested in Seattle's. So you got Luther Burden, last guy in. Or you can just say, hey, we don't want to bring back a Chicago player. Go down to Christian Kirk. That's just really, really affordable and cheap. But this is a way to play chalk and still be different because of the fact that you're triple stacking. You're leaving 600 on the table. You're playing a cheap defense. You're playing Kenneth Walker. This is a way to, if you're going to be playing this many options that are going to be chalky because that's the highest owned quarterback, that's the highest owned receiver, that's the third highest owned receiver, that's going to be the highest value. RJ Harvey's the second highest owned running back. So there's a lot of chalk in this line. So if you're going to be playing as much chalk as this line presents itself, I would leave some salary. And honestly, it doesn't look that bad doing something like that. If you didn't like Tyler Higbee, you can go up to a AJ Barner. You can go to Jake Tonjes if you want to as well. That doesn't hurt you at all. But let's say this last one that we're going to do a cardiac line once again with Caleb Williams getting the job done. We're going to obviously bring back with Puka Nacua. And we're going to say that Colston Loveland we're forcing him in this build. And we're going to go from there. So start off with, basically the way I do it is probably start off with 49ers. And if you have money to save somewhere to get different, I would go up to defense because I like all the options in the high 2K to low 3K range. Running back wise, it's going to be hard to not put them, but save a couple $100 more. Let's put Charbonnet in this time. And we'll do RJ Harvey. We'll do Khalil Shakir. And then last guy in, we're probably going to be rocking with a Juwan Jennings, especially if Ricky Pearsall's out. We could go down. We could try to Actually, we can't really afford doing something like that. But $5,400, this is probably a line where I would save some, or go all the way down to Christian Kirk or Dalton Schultz or Dalton Kincaid for that matter, and then go up a defense. Once again, Seattle might be my favorite raw defense this week, but you get double tight end and decent leverage because this combined is 25% ownership, which is almost half of what Dalton Schultz is putting up in terms of ownership. You get a Chalky Shakir, you get to bring back a Puka, but double stacking Chicago, I don't think a lot of people are going to do. DJ Moore, not that highly owned. Charbonnet is the less owned of the two Seattle running backs, and that's a fun way to do it as well. With that said, guys, that's all I got for you. We appreciate you tuning in. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what your picks are this weekend, what your biggest stands you want to take on, and then also what you're going to be playing. Once again, Discord is free. It is linked in the description below. We post our lines before kickoff, whether that is main, showdown, Saturday only, Sunday only. We're going to play it all. I know we broke down only the main this week, but the pricing, at least for the 2 to 4 gamers, are going to stay relatively the same. And then the showdowns, obviously, is going to be something we'll have to break down off camera, and then we'll see what we end up with. And last week, the showdowns were kind of what saved my DK investments because showdowns were working out, but the main slate was not the best in terms of going off because a lot of stands I took were the floor guys. There was a lot of ceiling cheap guys that were going off, and I was not a part of it. So hopefully we are this week. Hopefully we can find the good leverage, and I hope you guys are able to prosper as much as we hope to this week. So with that said, guys, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys on the next one.